Hello to everybody here and everybody online. Welcome and good morning and good afternoon and good evening because we have an incredible international audience. So happy to see you all. My name is Lisa Guernsey. I am a senior fellow in the Education Policy Program at New America, and I'm also a co-founder of the Learning Sciences Exchange, which you're going to hear a lot more about over the next 90 minutes today. It is a great honor to welcome you all here online and in person. We'll be talking about our in-person audience in a moment. And I'm doing so on behalf of my other two co-founders, who you will also meet, Roberta Golenkoff and Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, and our funder and partner on this project, the Jacobs Foundation. And you'll meet Urs Arnold and Catherine Giry later as well. So we all want to say thank you for being here with us, and we're really excited to get started this morning. So this is our first hybrid event for New America. We're very excited to be able to do this. And for those of you who may not know about New America, we are a think tank and a public policy institute. We're based in Washington, D.C., but we are actually global and virtual and all of it in many different places. And this event itself is its second ever event. We held our first LSX Summit in 2020. And it was entirely virtual. We were in the thick of the pandemic at the time. And we saw and heard from our fellows from the first cohort of our fellowship program at that time. And we've learned so much since then as well. We learned from them amazing things. And now we have our second cohort of fellows with us here in the room in Washington, D.C., and online in many countries around the world. So happy to have you all here. We've called this event Unusual Collaborations Equals Learning. And as you hear about the sharing of ideas that have come from our fellows over these past 2 years, I think you'll understand a little bit more what we mean by that. But first, I'm just going to give you some very quick stage setting. We are, as I said, so happy to have so many of you online with us. We had hundreds of registrations for this. And we are going to be able to capture your ideas, your voices, your comments online. So if you see on your screen to the right, you will see that we have a space for polling where you can say where you're from, what sector or what age of children that you might work with. And you can also put comments and questions into the Q&A box there as well. And then we also are on Twitter, so you can use the hashtag LSX2022 for that. Then in our in-person space, in front of me here are more than 35 people who have been an incredible part of the Learning Sciences Exchange program since the beginning, which was in 2018. We have fellows from our first cohort, fellows from the current one, who you're going to see on stage in just a few moments, and our new fellows, who will be starting with us officially tomorrow, and we're going to be announcing all of them towards the end of the program. So stay tuned for that. So now I have the great pleasure to introduce you to our President and Chief Transformation Officer at New America, Paul Butler. Paul came to us about, I guess it's been a year and a half or so now, and we're so thrilled to have him because in addition to incredible business experience, organizational strategy experience, he brings 20 years of experience in the world of media and entertainment and consulting. And as you'll see from our program today, the intersection of those points is so critical to our program here as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul to give a few welcoming remarks, and we'll get started. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everybody. It's great to see all of you. It's actually great to see some of you in person. I'm recognizing faces that I've seen in the various videos, so I feel like I'm on the red carpet. And it's great to see all of you in person, and thanks for all of the work. And thanks for all of you who are here today. This is a first for me as well. This is actually my first in-person event where I'm actually doing opening remarks at New America. So hopefully I don't break anything. But hopefully you'll be patient. I'm going to just start with a few things that many of you probably already know. The LSX program is built on a few core ideas. Solving problems and making a bigger impact requires getting beyond one's bubble. And I think just based on what I've seen from who's attending, you all are doing that. What I've seen from the work you've already done, you all have already been doing that. And the importance of this interdisciplinary approach, which I know a lot of you have really seen and are applying in the practice of the work. At the heart of LSX are the ideas and truths that children from all walks of life all have incredible potential, and that too often that potential is not met. So the science of learning, which you are all familiar with, continues to show us that children need so much from educators, schools, from all of us, from the caregivers in their lives. And we need to get that science into the hands of parents, educators, and all of the people who are in the care of children. And so all of the work that you're doing really advances those truths and those ideas. What you may not know, but you will find out and soon discover, as Lisa just said, as this is an exciting moment of expansion for the LSX program. And this particular cohort, which has included, as I understand it, fellows from Europe and North America, but now includes an expanded group globally of fellows who are joined us, both in the room and online, in other parts of the world, including Africa and Asia. And so we're so excited for everybody to be a part of this particular moment. Many firsts, but hopefully not the lasts in many different ways. And so finally, I'm just going to introduce the team, the partners that Lisa referred to earlier. Urs Arnold is the Chief Operating Officer of the Jacobs Foundation, and you all probably know him already. His colleague, Catherine, is also here in the room, and she's a program manager there. I just met her this morning. They have not just been funders, but they have been partners in every sense of the word since the beginning of the program more than 4 years ago. The Jacobs Foundation has shown an incredible support of those truths and those ideas that we just talked about earlier. And so I wanted to thank them and thank Urs and welcome him to provide opening remarks. So we'll do that.
Well, first of all, thank you, Paul, for the kind words and for hosting us today here in Washington. I also would like to warmly welcome all of you to today's summit. It's great to finally meet at least some of you again in person, and also a warm welcome to all you online. I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion. Klaus Jacobs was a true entrepreneur, and he managed throughout his career to actually build up 3 world market leaders in different sectors. And maybe just as an example, you all may know Toblerone chocolate. And throughout his life, he was also driven by the idea to ensure and help children to profit from the best possible education so that they could become social, responsible, and productive members of society. In order to do so, he and his family established, good 30 years ago, the Jacobs Foundation, based in Switzerland, in Zurich. And ever since, we have been supporting research in the area of child and youth development, but also fellowships, like the one here, and we implement our own programs. Maybe even more interesting is our Strategy 2030, so the next 10 years. And for the next 10 years, we actually pledged 500 million Swiss francs to provide children and youth with effective knowledge, skills, attitudes, skills, and opportunities to reach their full learning potential. And to do so, we see the learning sciences, but also cross-disciplinary and cross-sectoral collaboration as key. And that's the reason why a couple of years ago we were thrilled to learn about the idea of the Learning Sciences Exchange. and helped to establish it, and ever since I've been a proud supporter of the program. And now today, very much looking forward to the presentations, to learn what the second cohort has been doing over the last years. And with that, I wish you all inspiring ideas and discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Urs. It's been incredible to have the Jacobs Foundation support. So we are now going to give you just a little video to give a good sense of how the Learning Sciences Exchange works and what you're going to see today. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to run this video.
Whether it's in media and entertainment, whether it's in education in schools, or whether it's in high-quality childcare, there's a lot to tackle out there to help children and families thrive. So what we decided to do was to ask if you pulled all the greatest minds together from all the places that are focused on children and families, could you create a model where we could penetrate the noise in society and begin to really solve problems together?
So the Learning Sciences Exchange, which we call LSX for short, is this groundbreaking new fellowship program that is designed to bring people together across lots of different sectors.
There isn't a complex problem in the world that doesn't require interdisciplinary collaboration, and that's exactly what we're about.
I'm a journalist. Most of the people I talk to professionally and work with professionally are journalists. We see things in a particular way. And what has been great about the LSX Fellowship is that I've gotten exposure to the way that researchers think and policy people think and entrepreneurs think and entertainment and media people think. And a lot of that was new to me. It's given me this insight into different ways of doing things that I think will have a lasting influence on me.
So this LSX program is designed to happen over 2 years. First, you have the fellows coming together. So this is 15 people from across 5 different sectors. Then we match the fellows together so that they form 3 teams. And those 3 teams will then work together, developing something that helps to advance children's learning. And at the end of the 2 years, we have the LSX Summit, which is this incredible moment to just share what's been learned over the past 2 years.
When we can learn to embrace different perspectives, that's fundamentally a change in the way we see the world, a change in mindset.
We're already seeing these really exciting examples of fellows that have built something together and want to really kind of take it in new directions.
So Bunny to Bunny is a project we did for LSX. Most recently, we're really excited because we've been able to get some funding to share and print 50,000 books. We're also really interested in continuing to expand and scale our project to write the next books in our Bunny to Bunny series.
That's just one example of how the projects that come out of LSX can start to really take off. But we've also seen that people in the LSX program, they're finding that they're thinking differently about their careers, they're reaching for new heights.
If they take an interdisciplinary perspective, they can make it digestible, accessible, and usable, or edible science.
We're so excited about this new network that's forming, these relationships that are building that enable people who have been fellows before to connect with future ones, but also to connect those ideas across boundaries, both geographic and sector, so that there's always somebody you can lean on in a different place or a different sector to ask a question, to share new ideas.
Every time we train people to recognize the importance of breaking down these silos between them, we create people who are primed to make contributions, who are primed to solve problems, and who are primed to take diverse perspectives into consideration. But one thing that we shouldn't forget is that everyone has a wonderful time. They get to know each other, they engage in playful learning together, there's lots of interaction and interchange.
I think that the connections that we've made, the contacts that we've made are going to be super valuable, not just to me, but right across the cohort. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes and how we communicate and how we connect in the coming years.
This is a model that they can borrow and steal from. This is a model to help others in other fields or in other places where there's some real problem solving needed to think about how they can bring people together who are in different spheres.
LSX is a mindset. It's a process. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of adding dimension and perspective to what you do so that you can see the possibilities and you can see the ripple of your own ideas and your own projects in a world that's bigger than we are.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. I am not Kathy Hirsch-Pasek. I am Roberta Golinkoff. But although Kathy couldn't be here, I think that you already know that her energy, her enthusiasm, and her brilliance infuses this event today. And she will be with us in future. So LSX comes together on behalf of children and families everywhere. We can't solve all the problems of the world, but we certainly can gain a different lens on these problems by working with people across sectors. If we don't do that, we wind up remaining in our own little silos, and we can never have the impact that we could if we didn't come together. Consider COVID. I wish you didn't have to consider COVID. But think about all the different sectors that are involved with COVID. First, we have the medical research, the scientists. Then we have the policy people who think about how this will affect the public. Then we have communications and journalists who think about how to best craft the message of COVID so people don't just want to put their heads under a rock, which has happened. Entertainment, how do we get the message out so that people don't just change the channel? All of these sectors had to speak to the ongoing COVID crisis. Excuse me. So it is with the problems that children and families face around the world and in the educational sector that all, although not all in the world, have the opportunity to partake in. These are all complex, multifaceted areas where there are many problems indeed. And what we do at LSX is we bring the best minds together, which is why I welcome you, our new LSX Fellows, to join the party. We are LSX, and now you are LSX too. Who are we? We are a high-level group of mid-career interdisciplinary leaders working toward global impact in social policy for children and families. The LSX model, as Lisa said earlier, can be copied by other fields. The whole idea is to break down the silos that exist between us, because no complex problem can be solved without a multifaceted approach. So we have our 5 sectors, and you'll hear about those more as we go along. And each of the groups that we construct, the 3 groups comprised of one person from each of the sectors, comes up with a joint project. They produce blogs, they produce articles, and they come to see the world in a whole new way. What do they gain at the end? Why is this valuable? It's because we're like creating ripples in a pond. We're sending out these people who have magnified their impact by working together and will never be solo again because they will know how much they gain by working with people in other sectors. They learn a common vocabulary for talking about change. They develop networks for life. These people will know each other for years to come, and we continue to expand the circle now with 45 and perhaps even more. They develop the LSX mindset. What is the LSX mindset? It's the realization that you can't just work from your own field. if you wish to have an impact and solve complex problems. We have become a rapid deployment think tank. When things happen in the world, this is a group that can formulate a response to those events. And of course, we generate, as the groups do, potential solutions to pressing global and local problems for children and families. That's it. Thank you.
Roberta, thank you so much. And I know that Kathy is absolutely with us, if not online in spirit, but with Kathy and Roberta on this project, like anything is possible. It's just been incredibly amazing to work with you. So now we are going to take things down to some level of detail, really thinking about the learning settings that children are in, home, and in schools and in other places as well. And to do that, we're going to introduce you to the LSX Fellows for this current cohort, and they're in their 3 groups, and they're going to be in panels discussing what this was like over these past 2 years, and there will be moderators for each panel, and we'll also have some videos for you that tell their stories. So my job right now is I'm going to introduce all 3 of the moderators, and the first moderator then will come up, and then after that, each one will flow afterwards. So we have with us today Megan McClelland, who is a professor of healthy families and children at Oregon State University, and Megan will be our first moderator. Megan is also in the very first cohort of fellows, so she really gets this program. As does Jill Schinderman, who is our second moderator, and Jill I'm so sorry, Jill, I know you have an extra new title, so I want to make sure I get this correct. She's founder of Barclay Square Books, but also now director of publishing at PJ Library in Southern California. She also was a fellow in the first cohort. And then our third moderator will be Simran Mulchandani. We're so glad Simran is with us. He is one of our new advisors in our incredible group of advisors for this program. And Simran is the founder of Project Rangeet, which is a social entrepreneurship. It's developed a mobile app that features a real playful learning, a play-based and measurable social emotional learning and ecological knowledge set for children. And he's, again, as I said, a new advisor to the program, and he's going to bring a lot of that experience to us. So thank you all to our moderators. I'm going to turn it over now to Megan to get us started for the first group. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Hi, welcome everyone. Great to be here. I'm here to introduce the first panel of fellows. That's called the Playful Learning Challenge, and so I'm going to first introduce everyone. They include Pooja Balachandar, who's the Director of Product of Think of Us, Jack Graham, who's his title is the Climate Change and Nature Correspondent for Thomson Reuters Foundation, Elizabeth Gunderson, who's a Developmental Psychology Professor at Temple, Jeff Kleeman, who's a film producer and president of Ellen DeGeneres' Company of Very Good Production, and Kathy Mitchell, head of Market Insight and Analysis at Heriot-Watt University in Scotland. Yes. So first, before we start, I thought we could watch their great video to learn more about what their project involved.
When we embarked on trying to figure out a project for the LSX program, we looked at what the gaps were, at least the gaps we perceived in the world of early childhood development.
There's a real gap in early math and spatial skills, basically. So we knew that that was a real area that we wanted to push on and meet parents where they are, realizing that we thought that we need to make sure that we do something which is additional to their daily routine.
People have a lot of kind of baggage when it comes to math in general, and so they're intimidated by it, and so they tend not to do it with their children, and they tend to think that their children are too young to do early math activities, and that ends up kind of creating these developmental gaps as children get older.
So our project is Early Maths Development Challenge, so bringing 10 gamified activities that are based around the science of early maths development into homes, so they can be done between parent and child or between child and child. And our fun little activities are designed that parents can film these and make them into reels or quick videos, and then share on their social media of their kids doing fun activity, but behind that is building their early math skills.
We feel that entertainment is key to success. It maintains engagement, not just one-time engagement, but consistent engagement, repeatable day after day, week after week. Another reason entertainment was so important to us is it makes an emotional connection. If you are having a really fun, joyful experience, you are going to remember that experience better. Not only will you remember that experience, you will, on an unconscious level, remember the underlying principles of that experience. They will embed in both the child's consciousness, most importantly, but also the adults.
So one of the activities that's really fun is a treasure hunt. So it's super simple. Parents basically use spatial language and counting to give their kids instructions to find treasure hidden somewhere in the house.
There's something called the cardinality principle that we talk about in our research a lot, which is understanding that when you count something, the last number you get to actually means the quantity of the whole set. So kids that can count to 10 and they look like they know what they're doing don't understand that cardinality principle right away. And that's actually a really important and fundamental preschool milestone is understanding that and being able to understand how counting works.
Another one is monster drawing. So one of the kids or an adult would draw a monster and then not show the kid, and then have that kid draw the monster based on explanations, so using number techniques and shape language.
The research on spatial language is pretty substantial. So one of the nice things about this monster drawing game is they're not only hearing the words from their parents, but they can also, be the one that describes the drawing and take turns and use the words themselves.
It's got 5 pointy triangles pointing upward.
There's various other games like with cards, with hopscotch, games that are familiar but maybe with a slight emphasis on maths and maths language. And what we try to do with it is not only have those fun games, but have instructions and explanations for why kids should be doing this at a young age.
There's research showing that the kids who are doing better in math at the start of kindergarten are the same ones who do the best by the end of high school. So, a lot of this variability across kids and how well they're doing in math can really be traced all the way back to those 0 to 5-year-old years.
I think we're a pretty ambitious bunch, and when we thought about this and discussed this project, we very much had the idea that this could really take on a life of its own at the end of the project. And that's the hope.
Obviously, I hope lots of preschool centers, childcare centers adopt it and take it forward so that it scales. I hope that it goes viral on social media and it becomes part of your family routine, and that early math has kind of snuck in as just kind of a fun part of your family's day.
Wonderful. And here we have our panel members. So I'll put their names up. And so I thought maybe we could first start by, as a former fellow myself, one of the things that I thought of, and one of the things that I think we can all think about was some of the challenges of getting your idea in the first place. It took us quite a while. So I'm curious if some of you could talk about how did you pick your project?
Well, I think we went through a lot of brainstorming over Zoom, and there was also a lot of getting to know each other. And it speaks to the fellowship, at least in my mind, that we ultimately hit upon math. We knew we wanted to do something that didn't feel like it was already being done a lot. And there were a lot of programs out there which talked about reading and language and the importance of vocabulary around your children. But for a number of reasons, some of which relate specifically to me and my own math phobia, mathematics is not really at the forefront in terms of teaching parents or caregivers how to embed mathematical principles with 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds. Where do you even begin? How do you make that fun? How do you make that entertaining? Frankly, math would have never crossed my mind except for Liz, for whom it is a specialty. And as each one of us started to contribute, Kathy with policy, Jack with how do we make this edible science, as Roberta and Kathy would say, Pooja with, but how do we reach really a large audience with it? It was Liz who brought it all together by saying, but let's do it with math. And there was the math. How do we do it with math?
That's great. Anyone else want to say one quick thing? Does that capture it all?
I think so. I think with the new fellows, what you'll find is we went through several ideas, and I think the key thing was we knew with Liz's expertise in math that this was something that we wanted to emphasize. But then over time, we realized how do we turn that expertise into something which parents can reach easily, which they can reach day to day. And I think that's kind of gradually the ideas came and flowed around various things, and that's how we got to digestible challenges, which were fun, which are accessible, which we make sound as non-schoolwork as possible, and that's where we got to the project that we have now.
Great. We have a question from online that I'd like to ask you all. How can you use what you learned about interdisciplinary work to apply to your current role and your work? It's a great question in your sector that you work in.
We were actually just talking about this this morning. I'm from the policy discipline, and I think a lot of it is around the speed and approach from different sectors, particularly social entrepreneur. It was a kind of you have an idea, the quick ways that you can get to it, all the different approaches, go do them, and then the task is achieved. And it was a lot quicker, I think, and I think you saw opportunities where I saw practicalities and barriers. So I think taking part of that, I think, is really going to influence my role in the way I work going forward.
Just to add to that, I think for me, it was just really keeping that science-based insight at the center the whole time. I know we had, as a group, like quite a bit of healthy tension between, I'd say often like Jeff and I kind of saying, let's just like, wouldn't this be so fun? And Liz saying, actually no, like by making it fun, you're losing this math concept or whatever it was. So it was actually like a really helpful tension to like make sure that we were staying true to the science and also staying true to making it as entertaining and actually enjoyable as possible. So yeah, I think that was something.
Yeah, and I think from my end, I completely agree with that. And what I've taken away is that even in my research, when I'm, for example, doing studies that involve sending home materials to try to encourage spatial thinking, and test whether it has an impact, I need those materials to be fun. I need them to be entertaining and joyful in order to get engagement with this practice that I want to study in my research. And I think that's been a really helpful and important thing to be reminded of on a weekly basis.
I just have to say this is bringing back a lot of memories from our own group about me being the researcher saying, hang on. That's not what, we have to be careful how we say that. Here's a great other question. This is so fun, someone said. How do I get access to the Playful Learning Challenge? Someone would love to use it.
Coming soon to a website near you. So it is currently in mock-up stage, but we are in the process of actually getting it, up and running and publicly available. So we will, I'm sure, through the LSX channels, be publicizing that when it's out. But thank you, and we will hold you to using it.
Good. Wonderful.
Let me just give a little clarification as to how it will ultimately work, which is there's certainly a program that can go to daycare centers and schools and various kinds of caregivers, but we also want to have something that people could implement at home, and that would be something that was usable day after day after day so that the concepts were being reinforced. So initially what we are proposing is 30 challenges, all of them research-based, all of them made in a way that amplifies the entertainment and the fun of the challenge, and all of them also being, if you so choose, completely optional, shareable online. They all have moments that are big reveals or moments where most likely something really funny is going to occur in the middle of the challenge. And right now we're in process of essentially, stress testing each of those 30 ideas. And then the real question becomes online, how do they present? Do you unlock one at a time, so each day there's the next one? Is there a way to track where you are in those 30 days, so there's a kind of quantitative checklist that you're going through? What does it mean when people start sharing those challenges with each other? Can you jump to the one that was just shared by your friend or someone else? Do you have to do them in order? And as we solve those sets of questions, we'll then get to the point where, as Pooja says, it will hopefully be as close as your laptop or phone or pad.
Great. I want to ask one more question. We have a few more minutes. I think this in my own work is really critical, I think. How do you motivate very busy parents to engage in these activities with their children? We face this every day, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think we were going to use social media as a way to motivate parents, so the ones who want to capture the kind of cute 60 seconds of their kid and share for people to see, and then when you see someone in your network doing that, you then copy and replicate it. So you see a lot of those challenges going viral and doing huge numbers around non-science-based activities. It's actually kind of sneaking in the science and doing it that way.
That's great.
Yeah, we thought a lot about how to get busy parents to do these things, and I think making the challenges so easy that you could do them while you're waiting in line at the grocery store, which is the case for some of them. Those are the kinds of things we thought about, that they don't take any materials, or only a few things you have around the house. They're really fast, and we worked to make them so fun that the kid's going to ask for them again if you at least do it once.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, that has already happened with some of the parents that did test it out and do it with their children. Their kids ask for it next time.
Wonderful.
Another set of criteria that was important to us was that all these challenges should be essentially no cost. That anybody should be able to do them without specialized equipment, without specialized training, without any kind of special resources, so that they would be easy and on hand. And finally, what I've seen is even the best parents in the world don't always know how to keep their kids engaged or entertained 24 hours a day. And they certainly don't necessarily know what to do when they meet someone else's kids. It's often a, what do you want to be when you grow up, which is generally a boring question for the kid, and even a somewhat boring question for the adult. So this gives, you could almost say, an icebreaker or a moment of entertainment each day that they can do with the kids that will be genuinely enjoyable beyond its properties. And I think every adult and every child can use that.
And I think the other nice thing is they're quite adaptable. So within each challenge, there's kind of the entry-level basics of what you can do. And then as a child develops and is a little bit older, there's kind of extra layers that it's quite adaptable. So there's no kind of, we have instructions to be as clear as possible to explain in very easy ways for parents. But there are ways to adapt it and kind of take it forward. And also every step of the way we're explaining what the skills are that the kids are learning.
Wonderful. And then just one last question. Do you have any plans to do any studies or, actually this is a great question for me too as a researcher, to do any studies to collect data on the effects of your Playful Learning Challenge app? Next grant.
That is a great idea. Thank you for that grant application plan. To be continued.
Yes, wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone. This was wonderful. So exciting. So exciting. And now we're moving on to the next group. I think, are we all done? Okay. Moving on to the next group, which is called Tech Together. And I'm going to introduce Jill Schinderman to take on the moderator role.
Anyway, it is a real pleasure to introduce the creative team for Tech Together. And I'll start with, this is Brenda Bushhouse, Professor of Political Science at University of Massachusetts Amherst. Judith Danovich, Professor of Psychological and Brain Sciences at University of Louisville. Tammy Kwan, co-founder and CEO of Cognitive Toy Box. Tammy is watching remotely today. She's home with her new baby. And Annie Murphy-Paul, science writer for Hidden Brain and author The Extended Mind. And Ariel Zeckelman, former lead play designer at Osmo, now at Amazon. So we are going to play the video of this fabulous team.
My team was comprised of myself, Brenda Bushhouse, Judith Danovich, Ariel Ziegelman, and Tammy Kwan. And it took us a while to kind of figure out what we wanted to focus on, but eventually we coalesced around the idea of a lot of the educational apps that are available are not that high quality. They don't actually promote engaged and meaningful learning experiences.
So we know that children are using screens quite often. We've all seen parents hand off their phone to their child, while they're waiting in an office somewhere, or children, have their own iPad sometimes.
Research shows that young children are spending 2.5 hours a day on screens. And this is a problem depending on what it is they're doing with those screens. Are they learning anything? And so that we found in the research that the quality of games geared for preschool age are pitifully poor.
And yet, parents have, with them almost all the time, this potentially very powerful device. Once we started looking at what are almost like standard features on any smartphone, we realized how many of them really lent themselves to learning experiences. And each of us, we're all parents, and I think each of us had already had experience with using some of these features on a phone in creative ways with our kids.
I don't think we would have arrived where we arrived if it wasn't for Tammy. Tammy is a new mom, and as a new mom, raising a child in this digital age, she was really able to say like, hey, sometimes I just have to hand my kid my phone because it solves a lot of problems. And yeah, there's guilt associated with that, but if I knew things that I could bring to the table, like, hey, let's look at a picture of when we were on our last vacation and let's talk about this. Those are a lot of healthy screen time interactions that we hope to bring to this new generation of parents.
We know from the science of learning that children learn best when engaging in socially interactive experiences. We are developing a list of ideas for parents using the apps that are already built into their phones. And so, for example, looking at how can you use the stopwatch app in a way that would be productive. Say you're sitting somewhere, you could talk to your child about, how many seconds are in a minute, how many minutes are in an hour.
Also had a lot of fun thinking about the maps feature and how parents and kids could use that to find a place that's meaningful to parent or child.
Or maybe you say, where's grandma's house? And you put in grandma's house and how far is it to grandma's house? And how might we get there if we walked, if we drove, if we used public transportation? So you're asking them to think about distance, to think about time.
Or even crazy things like, okay, which way do you think we're facing? Open the compass app and oh, this is north and the sun is over here because it's this time of day. There's just so much you can do with your phone. And the idea is that we have prompts for parents or caregivers, or it doesn't have to be your parent, an adult figure that they can kind of follow through to kind of start some conversations and start activities.
The next step was how do we get this message out to parents? And so we consulted some experts on social media, and we gave a lot of thought to where do parents go? Where do they get information about learning? And we eventually came up with the idea of creating an infographic of our idea.
The hope is that we're able to get enough traction from TikTok and from the pamphlet that, it is something that we're able to change in everyday life.
I think technology has a lot of potential for children's learning, and that if we could capture it, we could really see some benefits for young kids.
I'm really excited to have our audience learn more about your, thank you. I'm really in need of this Tech Together program. I really just, anyway, so with that said, all of you come to the LSX Sandbox with your own set of skills, expertise, excitement, and passions. What was that interchange like, and how did you learn from each other, and what did you share with one another?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. What LSX was for me, it was really learning the language that policy, writing, and research uses. And that was really helpful to see. I mean, I'm coming from a and like a product manager background. I'm making games for kids. And personally, research was on the other side, and policy was also on the other side. I never really thought about it, and learning about what research and policy were doing was really helpful.
Yes. I'll say that for me, it was really about expanding the size of my sandbox. So as a researcher, I tend to interact only with other researchers, and many of us are very passionate about communicating our findings and what we learn to the public, but we really don't have a chance to do that often. And getting to talk to people from the different sectors really made me think much more broadly about the work that I do, about the goals I have for my future research in terms of making it, like we talked about, edible science that everybody can understand, and to really appreciate where different sectors are coming from, even as we all share the same goal of improving children's learning.
Yeah, I would say for me, the real value of the LSX program was encountering people who go about their work in a really different way from the way I'm used to doing, from the researchers that I tend to interview as a journalist. And so I'm thinking about Ariel and thinking about Tammy and how they had such a, I think Ariel earlier referred to it as a bias for action. Like Tammy and Ariel were always ready to jump in, try it, run the experiment, and then see what we would learn from doing something. Whereas, I don't want to speak for Judith and Brenda, but I think we're a little more deliberative and slow and like to think things out and talk things out in advance. So it was so exciting and exhilarating actually to be in touch with people like Tammy and Ariel, who were just always sort of raring to go.
I think similar to Annie, it was the timeline for the project, because my book on universal preschool took me 4 years from beginning to end. And Ariel's like, we can play test this. What? You don't need to get IRB approval? What? And so, again, it was a timeline and just being exposed. And I think getting into the sandbox, and not getting, I work with developmental psychologists a lot, but I haven't worked with a journalist. I haven't worked with someone who actually develops children's toys. I mean, that's just something completely new. So I absolutely loved it.
It's wonderful to hear. I think about from when Megan and I were part of this first fellowship, and we were able to get together in person because there wasn't any pandemic. So tell me about your creative process. How did that light bulb and aha moment come together when most of this time you've been creating and collaborating remotely?
Yeah, it was huge. So we started, back up, I'm just gonna give some context. We started looking at the research and we learned that there wasn't a great app or experience on the market that talked through social interaction and had meaningful learning connections, and meaningful learning was part of it. And so we took that research and we're like, well, let's make an app. Let's make an experience that will do that. And so we had some prototypes, we play tested, and we realized that it was really important to meet parents where they already were. There's one thing about being like, hey, we have this, but then that's not where parents are. Parents are in their everyday life. And I'll set it up there and I'll hand it over to Judith to talk through a bit more.
So I think, for me, the aha moment here was also just an appreciation of, it's easy from academia to say, oh, these apps are no good and why aren't they making better ones? But really, I've learned, it really opened my eyes to how much goes into making an app. And what we realized is that we didn't really need to make an app. We could take the tools that parents already have, and I think this speaks to a broader message about parenting, is that you don't always need to go out and buy the shiny new product. You already have those tools, but sometimes parents could use a nudge or a prompt of sorts, and that's what kind of shifted our thinking into thinking, well, instead of spending all this time and effort into making an app, how about if we just take the apps the parents already have and give them ideas on ways to use them in meaningful ways?
Yeah, another really key moment came when we actually were able to meet in person last fall in New York City, and just getting to meet everybody in person was fantastic, but it really accelerated our process, I think, that we were able to spend a day in a room together and collaborate. And one of the key moments there was that we brought in one of the LSX advisors, who we'll be hearing from later today, Anya Kamenetz. And Anya had written a book about tech use by children and how parents can be a part of that. And she was telling us what she learned by writing this wonderful book, The Art of Screen Time. And I remember her mentioning the term slow tech, and that kind of struck all of us, like, oh yeah, like these educational apps, which thanks to Judith with her depth of knowledge about educational research, I learned that so many of these educational apps are not really high quality. They don't promote meaningful, playful learning experiences. And when Anya said slow tech, that just kind of lighted a light bulb for a lot of us, that like maybe we could offer parents something different from this frenetic activity that these educational apps promote that aren't really generating real learning. And so that was sort of the spark of the idea for Tech Together.
I think because it was during the pandemic, when I flew to New York City, that's the first time I'd been on a plane. And it was packed, and I was kind of freaked out. But ahead of me were two sets of parents with similar age children, and they were like 2-ish. And one had the child on an iPad the whole time, just doing mindless kind of things. And the other one had a bunch of developmental toys. And the qualitative difference that unfolded in front of me was like, oh my gosh, wow, this is really big. And then we had a conversation with Tammy, and she was like, yeah, I do pictures with my child on the phone. And we thought, light bulb, use the phone in positive ways, because you see it all over with parents handing the child their phone. And so let's make it a positive and an experience that they can share.
So Judith, I'm going to, this really actually launches into some really great questions that I'm going to combine from the audience, because you talk about meeting parents where they're at. I'm so sorry. You've really hit on what you've talked about earlier, is how do you meet parents where they're at? And you've talked about the airport, you've talked about other areas. So some of the questions that are coming in from the audience right now are, number one, is there a target age range for this? And also, is there somewhere where teachers and parents can get these resources and have a little bit of explanation of how they're used? I know you've come up with treasure hunts and other ways to use exactly what are already part of your phone. So we'd love to hear more.
So in terms of the age range, we've actually designed these activities so that a fairly wide range of ages could do them. And the key thing here is, again, parents know their child, right? So you can adjust it, like the example in the video about looking at where grandma's house is on a map. Well, you can adjust that very easily, right? With a very young child, we must just talk about, what state does grandma live in? Is it close or is it far away? But with an older child, you could really have an interesting conversation of, well, would we drive there or would we fly there? What are the costs and benefits of each of those, right? And so the idea is, parents can adjust. We have another one that's like a scavenger hunt. And there again, I think parents know, right? They know what's in the realm of the kinds of things their child is going to be able to find and think about. And we're just kind of giving them the springboard, the idea of, here's something you can do.
So where is that going to live? There seems to be a bunch of questions coming in of how do people discover this?
We want to meet parents where they're at, like the previous group. And so part of this was, where do you see parents with idle time in their children? So are they at the bus stop? Are they sitting on the subway? Are they in the grocery store line? And this is where we would like to have the material so that you could see it, you could get the idea, you pull out your phone, and you do it.
We also have plans for making a sort of social media campaign, so that, like the digital version of the bus stop that Brenda was talking about, so that it's something that hopefully parents could not only access online, they could then sort of crowdsource and contribute their own ideas, like this is what I tried with my kid and this is what worked or didn't work. So we're still developing that. It's still sort of under construction.
Thank you all so much. I'm sorry we have to wrap up because we have to move on to the third group. But sponsorship is what I've heard. So anything for bus stops and grocery lines and all of that. So thank you so much. And it's my pleasure to introduce the next moderator, Simran Majadani, and our next group.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And thanks to the Tech Together team for giving us a way to actually turn on its head the stigma around screens and shining a light on turning each of these into meaningful, teachable, and fun moments, leveraging technology that already exists with parents. So the last group of the 2022 LSX cohort is Kindergrams. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to this remarkable, accomplished team. And I personally feel quite invested because I've briefly worked with Medha, John, and the team, interacted with them, and so I'm really excited to introduce you to them. Lillian Anekwe from London is a content curator, editorial guidelines and policy at Meta. Emmy O'Dwyer from New Orleans is a founder and principal consultant of Advancing Communities for Equity. Emmy couldn't be with us today in person because she's at home as her son is starting school today, and the team misses her dearly. John Sessler from Minneapolis is an education consultant and learning experience designer. And Medha Tare, I promised Medha I'd pronounce her name properly, from right here in DC, is Director of Research at the Joan Gans Cooney Center at Sesame Workshop. So now, without further ado, let's see what they've been up to, and let's watch the Kindergrams video.
So for the LSX Fellowship, I'm working with John and Maida and Lillian on a project that we call Kindergrams. A kindergram is a short audio clip of a child answering a pretty simple question about their daily life. It's an opportunity for an adult to really sit and listen to how they respond. And it's also an opportunity for us to share that kindergram, kind of like a telegram or a message, that a child somewhere else in another part of the world could really listen to and think about the things they have in common with someone from a completely different place, with someone who's their same age.
So we have asked parents of families in all different countries to have conversations with their kids about holidays and traditions, identity, kindness, empathy.
And these conversations and audio clips have been sent to us, and we've created a social media artifact that pairs the audio clip with some simple imagery and captions so that parents and children can watch these together.
That is a way of facilitating conversation and connection and communication between children from different cultural backgrounds.
То вода истратится.
То есть ты заботишься о планете. At the time when the LSX Fellowship was starting, many of us were concerned in our group about what we were seeing as lots of feelings of division in our communities. And so we wondered, how could we potentially combat this in a simple way? We wanted to do something that was low tech, that didn't rely on a lot of gimmicky, fast-paced, high-tech solutions, but something that really got us to the sort of fundamentals of just being a good human being.
So we know that kids ask a lot of questions. They can actually ask up to 100 questions an hour in some research. And questions are not just for information seeking, they're also for connection.
When we were brainstorming questions to ask the children to try and draw out their ideas about their worldview and how they thought about their own culture versus other cultures, we really worked on making sure that the questions that we came up with aligned with an idea called global competencies. So this is some work and some research on what is really the skills, what are the values, what are the behaviors that we need or we should encourage children to learn that will prepare them as young adults and later on in life to thrive in what we know is going to be a more diverse and a more interconnected world.
We also have found research that shows that learning about other people from other cultures can help reduce stereotyping. So we know that kids categorize others from a young age along lines of gender and age and race and language. And just knowing that other people, more specifically what other people are like, can help start to reduce and break down those barriers as well.
We really tried and went all out to include as many languages as we could and children's voices from as many countries as we could. That was one of our goals, to try and reflect geographical and cultural diversity.
So another outcome of the Kindergrams project is to strengthen children's media literacy skills. So as the parent or caregiver and the child are having these conversations and recording these conversations, they are creating audio clips, which is a form of media. And children can see that media is not something just to be consumed, but something that they themselves can create.
My hopes for the future of this project is that it just develops a life of its own, that children get really excited about learning and listening to others, and that parents get really curious about their kids, and we start seeing audio recordings flying in our direction.
Tell me about what you like about your best friend.
She's very inclusive. So, like, if I'm ever like, I don't like this game, or I'm like, this is not one that I prefer, and I'm like, okay, but we can play it. She's like, no, what do you want to play? So she's very inclusive.
And so I invite all of you parents, teachers, caregivers to follow our social media account, share with your child, engage in these conversations with your children.
Wow, that was amazing. So close to my heart. Welcome to the stage, Lillian, John, Medha, and hello to Emmy, and we miss you. But yeah, brilliant, love that video. So let's jump straight into it. There's questions already coming in, thick and fast. I'd love to hear from the team around what inspired you to create Kindergrams. Why is it so important in the world today? And I'm actually curious, because I just saw on the screen, your logo. What is the story behind it? I noticed the words "I am" are highlighted in the logo. Tell us that story. Who's going to go first?
So I'll start a little bit on the background of the project. So hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. I'm Medha. I'm a researcher, so I was interested in the research on, how do we help kids become more global citizens? And as was mentioned in the video, two main things kept popping up. Kids need to, and people, everyone needs to have an understanding and awareness of their own identity and culture, and they need to learn about others, and that helps build those attitudes and skills and behaviors. And we really also wanted to use this framework around mirrors and windows, and that kind of aligns as well. So you want to see yourself in your media and TV and books and all the things you see out in the world, and you want to also have a window into other people's lives and ideas and hopes and dreams too. So all of this was kind of in our minds as we were thinking about ideas for projects.
Hi everyone, I'm Lillian. So just to follow up with that, another one of the kind of guiding principles and our North Star when we were coming up with the project, and we spoke to it in the video as well, was our desire, which is consistent right across the group, to create something that centered the child's voice. We found it's quite rare to have an educational and a learning tool that is built around the child's voice and encouraging children to share their views. And really, like I mentioned in the video, just asking them questions about their worldview, how they interpret the world, what's important to them, what they enjoy. So that was one of the kind of motivations and led us to create Kindergrams as a way to encourage children really to speak to other children and engage and kind of compare their similarities and differences and how they feel about that. That's something that was important and was kind of, I think, very much front and center of people's minds at the time, at the beginning of the pandemic and all of the social unrest that was happening at that time. So that was another point of inspiration for us.
And I'm John, and to borrow from Roberta, the edible science, this was an opportunity to create some edible
social media content that adults and children could consume or co-view together. And we know that's critical in learning from the media content. And so we settled on the Kindergrams as a way to produce that content. We were really inspired by podcasts at first and thought we didn't quite have the capacity to build a podcast, but we did have the capacity to create something like an audiogram that is often used to promote podcasts. And so this really became the short form content that we created. And we worked with a team of experts, a branding expert by the name of Anand Herkadli, who created our logo, and then a content producer by the name of Mercedes Azeji, who's been working to create the visuals for the content. And then the I Am, as Simran asked about, that is something that we thought really connected to the importance of building self-awareness to build these global competency skills.
Great, wonderful. So there's a couple of questions maybe kind of related to what we've been talking about. So Anonymous says, how cool is this? I would love to know how each of your backgrounds influenced the approach and design.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm glad people are excited. It's been a long time coming, I think, so that's great to hear. I think the approach really just builds on all of our expertise. I know Emmy was also saying earlier to us that we each bring a different sort of toolbox and creative suggestions when things were coming up that we had to manage. So I was always kind of looking for more ideas from the research. John has this wonderful media sense. Lillian has her approach to messaging and writing. And Emmy, of course, has a policy and really understands the on-the-ground issues that early educators are facing and what kinds of resources and tools they could use to help the kids in their care. So I think that was one of the things that we all brought. If you guys want to add anything else.
Okay, cool, thanks. So there's two questions here that kind of connect. One is from Molly Sullivan. I love this idea. What non-tech resources did you draw, and what non-tech resources did you draw upon, and what inspired you? And then just sort of connected to that, are the words automatically translated into other language? So in the sense that, how can this be taken forward using, non-tech and then tech, and how can it then reach more children?
Just on the non-tech part, so we shared out quite simple instructions and consistent with what other people have been saying about meeting people where they are and ensuring that there are low-tech techniques. So we sent out just step by step, and people recorded them on their phones, sent them to us via email. And then John primarily and our contractor as well kind of edited them and used them that way. So everybody has a phone, and so it's quite easy, I think, to record it, record the audiograms and share them with us.
And something that was really important to us too was to highlight these authentic conversations between caregiver, parent, and child, not to be fully produced audio clips. And so we also paired those audio clips with some calls to actions for the families that are listening to these together to have these conversations. So a low-tech version, if they do not want to record their conversations with their children, how can you just engage in a conversation based on the theme that they co-viewed? And I also believe that this is a great way, we often heard from parents, to have some ideas for the questions that they could ask their children. That was one kind of outcome we weren't expecting, is parents saying, we didn't know that our child felt this way, or that was their perspective on this particular theme, because we've never asked them this question.
Yeah, that's important. The audiograms and the Kindergrams are kind of the spark and the inspiration, but it's really a mechanism for having that conversation and modeling that kind of interaction and modeling that kind of conversation about these issues.
Yeah, and the topics that you'll see are things like kindness and friendship and holidays and traditions. So it really touches on a lot of the social emotional topics that people are kind of discussing right now, but kind of gives you one concrete example of how a child might think about these things from somewhere in the world, and then also give suggestions on how parents can talk about those things as well.
I'm being reminded that we need to rush through this, and it came to mind that there's like this interesting connect between tech together, leveraging existing technology and what you guys are doing. So that's kind of cool. Tell me, what advice do you have for the incoming fellows, the 22, 24 fellows? You guys lived in a very different time. What did you learn that you can tell them about?
So I'll go quickly. Other people have spoken to this again, but it's the power of the network, particularly the LSX Fellows and advisors. We've connected with a lot of them during our process, and they've been really instrumental, I think, in getting us to where we are now. So that's what I would say. And a big learning for the new cohort as well is just be open to the journey. As a journalist, you have a preconceived idea of what's going to be the angle, what's the story, but be as open as you can to the process.
For me personally and professionally, it was a really wonderful constant over the past 2 years to have these weekly meetings, and we really did try to be consistent with meeting weekly virtually. And I just learned so much around collaborating between sectors.
Yeah, I agree. We didn't all meet in person until 2 months ago, and we just had the best time when we finally did, because we were already friends from Zoom. So it actually speaks to the power of tech that we could have had that relationships virtually and then have them be in real life. And I think just the advice is, again, use the network. We were cross-sector, but we also, I know several groups of the same sector met together. I met with Liz and Judith, and we all connected as researchers. So, I think just enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. Great. Thank you so much, you guys. Good luck with everything. And so now we're coming to the end of this. After these 3 great discussions, and congratulations to all the teams, we turn to our keynote for the event, a person who will provide some reflections on what we have just heard and help us see how this ties into larger issues in education that many countries are grappling with now. Anya Kamenetz is a journalist and the author of the book, The Stolen Year, How COVID Changed Children's Lives and Where We Go Now. Until recently, Anya was an education reporter at National Public Radio, right here in the United States. And her new work will focus on supporting children and developing materials with children that promote sustainability as the world copes with the effects of climate change. We're very fortunate to have Anya as an advisor to LSX. And she's spoken with many of our fellows about their insights and projects over the past years. On behalf of LSX, thank you, Anya, for being with us today, and over to you.
Hi, everybody. This is such a strange but amazing setup, and it's so creative. So it's really, germane and appropriate to this incredible gathering. I'm so happy to be part of this community and happy to be joining you today. And as I was listening to the presentations, I'm just so taken with each of these approaches and how humane they are and how they represent the appropriate use of technology. And some of the words I jotted down when I was watching these videos were learning, interdisciplinary, inquiry, collaboration, inspiration. And I was really struck by how the participants were modeling learning and trying new things. And I love the phrase of expanding the size of our sandbox. And as I've been listening and watching today, and really over the past 2 years of being an advisor to the fellowship, I'm thinking about the kids that we're doing this for. And I want to tell you a little story about a girl that in my book, The Stolen Year, I call Serena. I met her in San Francisco, and Serena was 4 years old when the pandemic hit. And she lived with her mother in San Francisco. And like 1 in 4 children in America, she has a parent who's an immigrant who came from Peru. And at the time of lockdown, her mother, Elisa, was fired from one of her 2 jobs, but she kept her job cleaning hotel rooms. And with the schools closed and the daycares closed, Elisa and Serena were taking the bus together to work. And while her mother is doing the vacuuming in the hotel rooms, Serena is trying to watch her kindergarten teacher give a video lesson. And when it goes to the math lesson, her mother told me that's when her mother has to get the sheets down to the laundry. So she's always missing the math lesson. And it's really hard because Elisa told me, I can't sit there with her and she gets distracted. She'd much rather watch TikTok than watch her kindergarten teacher on a tiny screen. And on the other side of the screen is an incredibly experienced and dedicated teacher with 15 years experience who is completely reinventing her whole job overnight She is spending 10 to 12 hours a day producing video content for live lessons, singing to the kids, acting things out. She's doing this bilingually in English and Spanish. She's using visuals and props. And the entire grade of her school has innovated and ripped up how they do teaching to split the children up into small groups. But still, only about a quarter of the kids are actually logging in on the platform and doing the exercises. Most of them show up in the morning for the music and the circle time, but they're not really participating otherwise. So it's incredibly frustrating. And when I met the family in person in April 2021, Serena just had no interest in reading. She's not interested in writing. She's really just interested in the phone. And this was the same, her teacher told me, for at least a quarter to the third of the kids in her class. And, you know, it's a really rough time out there for kids and for learning. And all of this is very much a global problem. In May of this year, I was in Ukraine and I saw schools that were bombed and schools that were looted. And I saw children who have also been learning on phones since the start of the war, because we have this amazing new affordance and technology, which is the ability to pivot schools to remote literally overnight. And I actually, while I was still in the US, I joined a Zoom lesson where it was a group of sixth graders. They're learning English. Their teacher is in one city. Some of the children are back home in Eastern Ukraine. Some have evacuated to Poland, to Germany, and they're all coming together on Google Meet to have their English lesson. So it's incredible. It's touching. It's heartbreaking. It is the modern world today. Schools closed in March 2020 for 1.6 billion children around the world. UNICEF, the UN, says that they may have lost $17 trillion in lifetime earnings based on the fact that there is such a huge loss of educational attainment in this global generation. And what we're working on now is preventing a lost decade. So, you know, before the pandemic, the world was on the track of getting more kids into formal learning, and they were focusing on improving the quality of learning that kids were engaged in. So now we are worried about not meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, but actually preventing losing ground because of these compounded risks. And so where does that leave us now? I mean, the urgency of this kind of project cannot be overstated. We need innovation. We need energy. We need good uses of technology. I mean, whether it was with Serena in the hotel room or whether it was with the children in Ukraine, the phones are there. It's really important that they're there. We're frustrated with the fact that we can't be together, but we still are happy that we're able to be connected separately. And understanding how children learn today, understanding the constraints that parents are under, that schools are under, is so crucial. And I know all of you know that. And what makes me so excited about this fellowship at this moment isn't the technology, but it is the innovation. It's the mindset. It's the energy that all of you are bringing to this, because teachers and parents are really burnt out right now. They really need some fresh energy, some ideas, some innovation, and the play and the joy that all of you are bringing to this cause. And the kids really, really need it too. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you to the participants, and thanks to Lisa and the rest of the New America Foundation for letting me be part of this.
Thank you, Anya, for helping us to kind of see all this in context, because what you just stated about the state of learning for today's kids around the world, it really couldn't be more urgent. So we appreciate you very much. So Roberta and I are now up here at the podium because we've come to this incredible moment.
Drum roll, please.
Woohoo! Where we are going to be able to take ourselves into the next 2 years of this Learning Sciences Exchange program. And I'll just say before I toss it over to you, Roberta, and Kathy, we feel like she's here with us. She's here. We have been on this just incredible journey ourselves in helping to develop this program. And as you saw, these last 3 groups had these fantastic ideas and projects that are focused on children from the earliest years up through age 8. And our next group, not only are we including some more folks that from many different regions that Roberta will tell us about, but they're also we're going up the age span a bit. So our next group will be looking at how to help children in their learning settings all the way up to age 12, all the way up through middle school potentially. So Roberta, let's get it started.
Sure.
Obviously, we are thrilled because you are continuing this wonderful practice to welcome these top-level, mid-career professionals who are successful in their own right now, but who wish to have more impact in the world by joining with us. They're from journalism, they're from entertainment, research, educational leadership, and social entrepreneurship. They hail from 8 different countries, 4 continents we're in now, and they will be exploring new ways to support children's learning, as Lisa said, from ages 2 to 12. So we will introduce the people in the different areas. Not all could be here with us today, but they're online with us. Andrea Paula Golden, this is the research science area, is professor in Argentina at Di Tella University, and she's at the Laboratorio de Neurociencia. Juana Negru Subterica is also a professor. She's in the Department of Psychology at Babas Bolyai University in Romania. Dina Weisberg is a professor in the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences at Villanova University in the U.S.
And then for our policy systems education leadership group, these are folks who have incredible experience leading systems, leading organizations that are helping to change education. We have Michelle Deneen White, who is founder and director of Play Smart Literacy. We have John Hutchinson, in the United States. John Hutchinson, Director of Training and Development for the Reach Foundation in the United Kingdom. And Margaret Worthington Smith, who is the Research, Innovation, and Development Strategist for the South African Department of Education's E-Cubed program.
In South Africa.
In South Africa.
We have some journalists, too, who hail from all over the world. We have Jenny Anderson, who is a freelance journalist, author, and podcast host in the United Kingdom. We have Mariam El Marrakeshi, who's a filmmaker and multimedia reporter in Egypt. Benjamin Herold, who works in educational technology.
As a reporter.
And who is with Education Week in the United States.
And then our entertainment fellows, we have Bethany Kobe, who is the Chief Vision Officer and co-founder of FAM Studio in the United Kingdom. Henry Sampson Mafulu, who is Executive Director of the JOS Film Initiative in Nigeria. And Natasha Tarpley, independent writer, an entrepreneur, and author of some beautiful children's books, who is in the United States.
In the area of social entrepreneurship, people who know how to bring ideas out to the public, we have Emma Beamer, who's co-founder and program lead at Designathon Works in Ireland. We have Elizabeth Paranaremi, who's CEO and co-founder of Zenafri Limited in Nigeria. And finally, Ferdinanda Rain, who's founder of the History Club Lab in the United States.
So a huge congratulations to you all. Thank you so much for being part of this with us, and welcome. And I am now going to introduce Catherine Gere, Program Manager for the Jacobs Foundation, who is going to start to close us out. But I'm just so thrilled, and it's been a real pleasure to work with Catherine as well. Here you go, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Wow, what an event. It's really great to be here. My name is Catherine Gere. I'm the program manager at the Jacobs Foundation, and I've been with this program from the very beginning when we first got the first concept note and were kind of dreaming this all up. And I really want to thank you, New America, for being such a wonderful partner in co-creating and implementing this program. In particular, Lisa and her team, but I know that she has a lot of helpers. And also a big thank you to Kathy and Roberta. They've been thought leaders. They've been pouring their hearts and minds into this program, bringing their enthusiasm and really helping us on this journey. And also a big thank you to the advisors who have been here asking critical questions. Why are you doing this? Where do you want to go? And providing feedback to the fellows. And then obviously, last but not least, a big thank you to the fellows. The first cohort who has been with us, trying out, piloting this program, and the second cohort who so courageously worked through the pandemic, the challenges that were posed to us all, going like completely virtual. And the third cohort, we are so happy to have you here or online, but starting with us for this third phase and really helping us improve to the next level and taking this to the next phase. And finally, thank you all who have been watching today, but also those that maybe will be watching afterwards. I hope there is a recording showing us your interest and support. And we are inviting you to join this movement of LSX mindset, of changing perspectives, of taking new position, of deepening your understanding of different sectors. Not just working from your field, but really across fields to solve the big problems we are facing in today's world. And I want to close with the famous quote from Gandhi, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Last but not least, I just want to say a huge shout out of thanks to Elise Franchino, who was our LSX coordinator, who has really made all of this happen. And to our incredible events and communications teams at New America. There are many, many people behind the scenes today and over the past many weeks who have made this event possible. And it's just been such a thrill to be here together in this both in-person and hybrid space with everyone. So a huge shout out to the New America events team. I love you guys. And thank you to everyone who's been with us today. We will close it out now, but we want to stay in touch. We're going to keep the conversation going at LSX 2022 on Twitter. And we also have a newsletter and Twitter feeds and follow us and all of it. We really want to be part of this with you. We want your ideas. We need to harness this energy and bring it forth in the world. So thanks to everybody, and have a great afternoon, everyone. Take care.